welcome to Automated Success.
Thank you.
So I'll probably just get right into it with you. You're a very interesting person. You have a lot of accolades under your belt. Go ahead and you actually have so many. I don't want to just read and list them, but I will tell the listeners before you introduce yourself. We're talking to a 3-time founder, 2-time CEO. He's been an investor, advisor, basically anything you could do in the tech space, in my opinion, you've done, and at a very high level. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we're going to dive into it because I'm very excited to do this show with you.
Yeah, so I'm Oliver Gunasekara, CEO and co-founder of Impossible Metals, and I've been a serial entrepreneur for the last 20 years or so.
So looking at like kind of what you've done, I mean, so you ran you have Impossible Metals, but you have some other stuff that you've done, and we'll get to how you got there. But one of the things I found interesting is, what is deep sea mining? Like kind of let's get right into deep sea mining.
Yeah, it's a controversial subject, but it's basically a form of mining that doesn't happen on land, but actually happens in the ocean. And there are different types of rocks in the ocean, but the ones we are trying to go after, they actually don't involve any cutting or blasting or tunneling. They literally just lie as round potato-sized rocks on the seabed floor. And what we're trying to do is build technology that can pick them up with the least environmental impact. And the reason why we want these rocks is that they're the biggest source of nickel and cobalt and manganese, and they have large amounts of copper. These are all metals we need to electrify everything.
So I'm assuming it's controversial because people think you're disturbing, like, obviously sea life, but we maybe go into why it is controversial, but maybe why it shouldn't be as controversial as it is, I guess.
It's controversial because of I think a couple of factors. One, there is no deep sea mining yet happening. There's a lot of companies like mine that are getting ready and building technology, and most of them are using technology that was really invented in the 1970s, so 50-year-old technology. And unfortunately, it has some negative connotations. It basically vacuums up the seabed floor, and any of the biomass, whether that's bacteria or other forms of megafauna that live down there, will be destroyed. Now, there isn't a huge amount of life. It's not like a rainforest, but the life that's there is very unique and special. And so what we want to do is do selective harvesting, where we just remove some of the material, and that preserves the habitat. Because who knows, there could be the cure for cancer in the bacteria that lives in the deep seabed. I think it would be a real shame to destroy all of it before we know that.
Well, so it sounds like you're someone that wants to do it as environmentally consciously as possible. So, I don't want to spend the whole time on this, but now that we got into it, and I'm intrigued. So how do you guys even know where those minerals exist? I mean, I'm sure it's not on the whole seabed floor, right? So how do you guys scan and figure that out in the first place?
Yeah, it takes special conditions for these rocks to form, and I'm actually holding one. I probably for you, Joe, you can kind of see it. It's like a
Well, the
potato.
people on YouTube will see it, so this is
Okay,
perfect. So if you're
good.
listening to it on your car, go to YouTube and listen to the first couple minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a round potato-sized rock, and these form over millions of years, and they form where there's the right oxygen level, where there's been water for a very long time, where the trace metals are in solution. So it's not everywhere, but over the last 50 years, there's been a lot of surveying data. In fact, there's something like 40 exploration permits that have already been issued, and each one of them is for a given area where we know these minerals are. And so there's been quite a lot of surveying data. So we know where a large percent of these minerals already exist.
So this is fascinating me. I didn't think this was going to be the part of the show that was going to fascinate me. So this is kind of like the bonus section early on. So the I would have assumed that in my mind, before you even went into that and said it's minerals in the water and they solidify and they end up there. But in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe when the last meteor hit, these things just ended up on the bottom of the ocean and that's where they're at. That's what I would have assumed. I would have not thought that's how they formed. So how did now let's go to the business side of it for a second. So I mean, is that the main thing, the main purpose? You're like, is that the company's main goal or objective, or are you getting into this because you were in something else?
No, I mean, my career was really spent in semiconductors, but I realized that there was an opportunity to create new technology, underwater robots, leveraging semiconductors and AI, that could change the environmental argument for why we should do this. And I'm a big believer that we need to transition off fossil fuels. They've been amazing for us. They've driven our economies. But we now have technology like electric vehicles that I think people should adopt. But there are barriers. They're very expensive. They don't have the range. And we don't have enough charging infrastructure. Well, guess what? All three of those are driven by metal pricing. How much metal can we get? What is the cost of it? So if I can drastically lower the cost of these metals whilst providing huge quantities, I think it's going to make every American be able to afford an electric vehicle and have a great range and have charging stations wherever they want to do long trips.
So how did you even come to find out? Like, I mean, every has their point of inception, right? So like how did you even one day realize, okay, I'm doing semiconductors, I'm doing all this other stuff, and
Yeah.
now, but this is the direction I'm going to go.
So COVID, basically. So my last company, fortunately, we were able to sell it just before like July of 2019. And so, I was going to go traveling, right? I'd made some money. I didn't have time commitments. Life was going to be great. And then the pandemic happened, and like everyone, I'm locked down, and I'm just researching, and I discover some companies that are doing the dredging technology. And it seemed to me, why are we not trying to use better tech? In 50 years, we've all seen everything improve drastically. And it kind of bothered me that they were still proposing exactly the same technology that was tested in the 1970s. And so that's where this idea came about. Couldn't go anywhere, reached out, ultimately over some months, found some co-founders. We formed a company. We raised some money. We didn't meet in person for like the first year. And that's basically the beginning of Impossible Metals.
So you haven't even started. I mean, obviously have you actually even been able to start any mining yet, or everything you're putting together right now is to be able to do it?
Yeah, we actually are doing some testing. We did some testing last month, and we'll be back next month off the east coast of Florida. So it's a vehicle that we've built. We call it Eureka 2. It's not large enough for full scale mining, but it's there to just test the technology that we've built. And we hope we'll pick up one of these rocks from the seabed next month. That will be a major milestone for us, because these rocks are very deep. They can be up to 4 miles deep in the ocean.
So I'm calling you from the east coast of Florida right now. I'm on Singer Island, so I'm in
Right.
Palm Beach. So that's interesting to know that you'll be down here. The so okay, so honestly, I'm a little verklempt because I kind of took a total turn from some of the questions that I had. So I kind of want to come back on the rails of what we had. So I want to come back to this, but so walk me back a little bit with your journey joining ARM in 1994, being the CEO and co-founder. Like, give me, like you said, you sold a company. So you said COVID got you into this, but looking back, you said you sold a company. So maybe a lot of people listen to this for the business side too, not just the automation side. So talk to us a little bit about some of your previous endeavors.
Yeah. So I can give you kind of brief background on me. I grew up in the UK. That's where the kind of the accent comes from. Did engineering, electrical and electronic engineering, and I was fortunate to join a startup very, very early. So this company was ARM. I joined it at the end of 1994. I was like employee number 60, so it was a very small company. But the company just had the right technology, the right timing, the right leadership, and became, well, last year it had the biggest IPO on the NASDAQ. So I think it was over $65 billion. And its market cap today, I think, is over $120 billion.
Wow.
6,000 employees. So, a huge success. And obviously it took some time, but it was really exciting to join a company that just was a rocket ship, had the right product at the right time. My job was to really promote its technology into what became mobile phones. Initially pages. It's that long ago that phones were not very popular. Pages were more popular. So we started kind of promoting to pages, and then we saw the growth of phones, and we had the right technology. Initially, I was doing this all in Europe, primarily in Scandinavia, going to Finland, going to Sweden, going to Germany, doing a lot of that. Then I moved to Japan. I did the same thing in the Japanese market for a few years, lived and worked out there. ARM had its first IPO, about $1 billion in, I think, 1998. Then I came back and kind of had a team that was running mobile. And then my last role at ARM was to run corporate development, where I was looking at investing and acquiring startups. And I did a few of those. But ultimately, around 2007, 2008, I kind of got the bug to go back. ARM was now a public company. It was a few thousand people. I really liked the very early days when it's very tiny. And so I left and started working. Then I had moved to Silicon Valley. So as the last job at ARM, they asked me to move to California. And that's where I've been now for 18 years. And I basically worked at a bunch of startups, just kind of doing business development, marketing, go-to-market. And then ultimately in 2012, I formed a company that was called NG Codec, which was a new way of streaming video. And then ran that company as the CEO and founder until we sold it in 2019. And then pandemic happened, and then Impossible Metals.
No. Yeah, I mean, hearing you say all that, I'm feeling like I should, after the show, be asking you for advice. So we share the whole startup, like I crave starting up businesses myself, and everything that you are doing, it's like what I'm currently doing with AOS right now, doing all the stuff for service and robotics, and now it's finally getting traction, and now it's like now the fun is beginning, because now it's like you got to get people to work, and that's what I crave. That's the fun, right? So that sounds like what you would appreciate also, is building the teams and kind of riding that wave of momentum to grow and to lead, right? So, one of the things I'm always interested, especially for my own purpose, is elaborating on raising capital, right? So like I see in the research, like, you had experience raising 15 million in funding for NG Codec.
Yep.
Okay. So, what strategy did you have to do in that to basically make this attractive to investors?
Yeah, I mean, it's always about different rounds, right? So you rarely raise a large amount in one go. You raise a small amount of money, enough to kind of deliver something of value, and then you raise another round. And so the question is, you really need to be thinking of those milestones, right? You want to raise the minimum that you can, but delivers something really concrete that will then unlock the next round of funding. So at NG Codec, I think our first funding was the first round is typically like pre-seed. It's an idea, right? You've got a team, you have an idea, you've identified a problem. You probably haven't built much, because it's very early days. And that was the case with NG Codec. That was definitely the case with Impossible Metals, right? We had established a founding team. We said we're going to reinvent deep sea mining with new technology, but we had some paper ideas, but we hadn't really built anything. And in NG Codec, the same. We kind of knew what we were going to do around video compression, but we hadn't built anything. So I think your first check is often on you as the team. What is the problem? What is the opportunity? And that's where I recommend people raise a smaller amount, you know, 1, 2. In NG Codec, it was 3 million. In Possible Metals, it was actually only 2 that we raised in that first kind of idea phase. And that's kind of pre-seed. And then seed, now you need to think about what you have to really have built something. You know, you need a bit more than just the idea. You know, you need to give investors confidence that what you're doing, you can do it, that you can start that journey. And so in the case of NG Codec, we started to get the design to work, a very early version of it, you know, so we had something to actually demonstrate. In the case of Impossible Metals, we were fortunate to get into Y Combinator, and we worked hard and said, well, what could we build in 3 months from going in that showed something? Now, we couldn't build a full robot, right? That's just too much. But there's this robotic arm that we needed that was pretty unique. No one had really built this type of robotic arm that would work underwater. So we said, we'll build that. And we'll build it just in a tank, like a bath type system, a tow tank. And that's what we set on to build, you know, small team working long hours. But at the end of the 3 months, the arm could basically find rocks that we'd placed and pick them up. And that was, I think, very key to then raise our seed round in Impossible Metals. It was about 10 million that really kind of showed, look, this team can actually build something. It's a strong team, and the market opportunity is quite large.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting as you bring that up, because one of the things that I think that's been hard for me, and I want the show to be about what you're doing, but it's interesting content, I suppose, is, you know, since I have other businesses, I don't know that it's a mistake or if it was a good thing that I did, but I used my other business to fund my new business. So now when I'm trying to fund it, people are like, it's always sloppy of what funding round I would actually be in, you know, because I basically have been taking my own money. You know, I already have a model that's working, but then, you know, people often tell me we have a little bit of a mess of spaghetti to unravel what you took from the other company. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe sometimes I'm just need to simplify it and just cut it clean and say, here's where I'm at. These first couple of rounds I handled myself. Now here's where I'm at. It shows what we're doing. This is the team. So I appreciate you kind of walking not only myself, but all the listeners down the path of how to kind of deal with that. So, you know, I can't help but think the potential's got to be huge. I had a guy on the show a long time ago. I think his name was Dave Neville, and he was talking about how, like, there's people trying to mine asteroids right now for these for precious metals, right? But it seems like your way seems so much easier. But is that not true? I mean, is it harder to go 4 miles down in the ocean? I assume, with pressure and all that stuff. So you want to elaborate on the complexities of what you're trying to do?
I think they're broadly similar, different, but similar. You know, space, you know, you've got to get into orbit, but you can rent space in a SpaceX shared ride. So you don't have to do that. It's costs money, but you can get there. And then in space, you kind of, you know, you got to survive in the vacuum of space. You got to survive. Some of the radiation can be harsh. We have an environment where, like, we have to get the vehicle where it needs to go on its own. It's also expensive because we have to charter ships to kind of take it to the ocean. But we have an environment where it's not a vacuum, but it's immense pressure. So, you know, at almost 4 miles deep, we have 600 times the atmospheric pressure. I mean, this will crush everything unless we build it out of titanium or steel or glass, which are the primary materials that we use. It's just incredible pressure. Yeah, glass is interesting because although it can be brittle, you know, you can easily break it with a hammer, it actually has a huge amount of strength. And if you build a sphere and the pressure kind of helps to strengthen because it's uniformly distributed. So glass is something that we use. It's a lot cheaper than titanium, and it's a bit more flexible than steel. but we do use titanium and we use steel. So protecting all of the sensitive components from that immense pressure is really, really challenging. We also have to deal with leaks, right? If anything leaks, all the electronics will fry. So that's always a challenge. We have to use special connectors. And then the third one is communication. In space, radio waves work really well. We can send high resolution video long distances, not in the water. Radio waves basically don't work. And so you have to use acoustic modems. And acoustic modems are very, very low bandwidth. You cannot send pictures. You can just send very small amounts of text. The latency can be really long. So if we're at 4 miles deep, we could have 12 seconds latency, between you send something and then you get something back. And then the bit error rates are very high. So it's an unreliable system. We don't have GPS. GPS doesn't work underwater. We kind of have to create our own version using acoustic modems. So a lot of challenges. And then, salt water is just very corrosive. So, it is a very, very challenging environment to work in.
So, yeah, you brought up the leaks, and that's crazy to me to think about it because I do automatic lawn mowing, and we have trouble keeping water out of those machines where there's no pressure. I can't imagine how the heck do you even accomplish this? It's something I didn't think about. I mean, are you just filling it with air to keep it? You're using the pressure of the air to keep it out, I'm assuming, or what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, we use the hardest piece is when we have connectors, right? Because we need to get power and signals and data out from one container to another. And you can buy subsea connectors, so they're designed, but sometimes they leak. So that's, wherever if we have a sphere, we will typically cut it in 2 halves. And so that allows us to open it up, inspect the electronics, build them, and then we'll seal it. The pressure helps because if it's a sphere, it kind of pushes the two together very, very strongly. So that normally isn't too big of a problem, but it's the connectors, because we need to get wires in and out, and those can be a source of where water will seep in.
So okay, so like for me, and I'm trying to do a good job for listeners that would probably never even think something like this is happening. So I'm trying to kind of go through it. So right now you're going to be on the East Coast, Florida. You're going to do an exploration type thing.
Yeah.
But once this works out, it seems to me, I mean, how do you take something that's 4 miles down on the ground and get it back up to the surface and do this in a timely fashion and not disturb all the bacteria and everything on the ocean floor? And then you add, how do you even know which rocks to pick up in the first place?
Yeah, some great questions there. So let's work backwards. The good news is all the rocks are the same. They have the same grade. We don't really have to decide which one to pick up. The thing that we do need to decide is that we know about 1% of these rocks. The technical term is a polymetallic nodule, multiple metal nodule. But some of them, about 1%, actually have visible life growing on them. So this could be a deep water coral, a sponge. We know there's a species of octopus that lays eggs, but it's only 1%. And so what our cameras are doing is, they are finding the rocks on the seabed floor so that we can move the robotic arm over the rock and close the claw and actually pick them up. So all of that is run autonomously on the robot. We have an NVIDIA GPU that runs that software. But now we're adding the software that detects, there's a coral here, there's a sponge, there's some life that isn't a rock, in which case the vehicle would just skip it and leave it behind. So that's kind of how the collection works. Now, how the whole system works, let me describe this, but I'll also send you a YouTube video for the show notes that has a 60-second animation of kind of how it works. And basically what happens is that we retrofit a crane to a bulk transport vehicle. So the ship that would move the rocks to port, these are traditional bulk transport ships. We add our own crane that will put our robot into the water and bring it out. And once the ship gets to the ocean where we want to do the mining, the robots are placed into the water with the crane. Once they're in the water, they're fully autonomous. So they have no tether. They have their own onboard battery. And they use the buoyancy engine, which is a piece of tech we've designed to make the vehicle heavier by pumping water in. And that allows the vehicle to then descend. So it starts to sink. And it uses its sensors to figure out where it is, what altitude, and it ultimately descends quite rapidly until it gets very close to the seabed. Now, it never lands. It hovers about a few feet above the seabed floor, and then it turns on its lights and it looks for the rocks. Each time it sees the rock, it moves its arm over and it picks up a rock and then places it inside the internal conveyor system that takes the rock into the storage hopper inside the vehicle. It does this for, say, 30 minutes, filling its belly effectively with rocks. Once the rocks are full, the vehicle uses the buoyancy engine to pump some water out of its chambers. The vehicle floats to the surface. It's then recovered by the crane. Once it's on the ship, the payload is emptied, the battery is swapped, any maintenance is performed, and now the vehicle can be redeployed.
Okay, so that's amazing. So I'm assuming that the belly that's holding the rocks is part of your buoyancy engine. So that's how you can keep lifting. Because I'm trying to figure out how you're deep sea, maybe 4 miles in, you got to put the rock in without letting water infiltrate. So you've got to, I'm assuming, have some sort of the same system you're using to sink the robot has to be the system that you're ingesting the rocks in.
Not quite, actually. So the rocks are kind of in a cage, so they're exposed to the ambient water.
Okay.
And as the vehicle floats to the surface and ultimately is recovered, the water will just drip off.
Okay.
But we have a separate system that we call the buoyancy engine, which are these containers that we pump water in and out of. And they're the ones that make the vehicle.
Yeah, so that's a sealed, completely metered.
Exactly.
Because when I thought of it the first way, I was like, how does it know the density of each rock? Because the density of rock has to be different than the density of the water. And then how does it not? So, okay, so that makes sense. But then as you're adding rocks, you have to probably be pumping a little bit of water out to keep your buoyancy.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the key design considerations, that we can do dynamic buoyancy. So as we pick up each rock, the cameras kind of estimate its weight, and we pump that amount of water out of the buoyancy chambers to keep the vehicle neutral.
So how many robots usually deploy if you have one ship?
Something like 16 is the number that we think. Now, it somewhat scales with how much production do you want to do, but probably first deployments would have a fleet of maybe 16 of these operating concurrently. But in time, that could scale to over 100 or more.
Amazing. So, and all of the rocks have the same minerals, or it's kind of a combination of each one? Like, I mean, just going back to that in the beginning.
Yeah, they all have the 4 minerals in basically the same percent. So you get nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese. And the ratios, the percent, are pretty common for a given location.
And is there any part, like, so is it in the oceans, like, is it warm? I'm just thinking about how these minerals accumulate. Does temperature and area of the ocean make a difference, or they're just kind of all over? You just have to figure out the areas.
There are specific conditions like oxygen level, how long the water has been water. So these rocks take like millions of years. Like every half inch is about 1 million years to grow, because the metals are in solution, they're in the water. And then around a kernel, like a piece of clay or a piece of shell, they start to deposit and they grow like rings. And so every 1 million years, you get half an inch diameter. And so this rock, this is about 4 to 5 million years old because of its size. And so that means the water needs to have been water for that length of time. That typically means deep water. Because if it wasn't shallow water, it could have been land a million years ago.
Man, this is fascinating to me. So what's the largest one of those rocks you found then? Just
We
knowing how long it takes them to grow.
Yeah, there are definitely ones I've seen reported that are up to about, you know, 9 centimeters. So that's probably, I don't know what that is. It's probably 5, 6 inches, something like that in diameter.
So
Quite
then
big.
that would be like 12 million years then if it's a half an inch a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, crazy. So what is, I mean, what's the market potential in this then? Right? I mean, from what people are surveying and realizing, what is the available market for
So
this?
they've estimated that in the seabed for the minerals that have been discovered, and we've only discovered a small fraction of what's there, but something like $100 trillion worth. Trillion.
Holy crap.
You know,
That-
it's enough to electrify every form of transportation for the next 50 years.
So then do you think, I mean, is this what's lacking in our, I mean, so is it the lack of minerals that's causing us to be kind of stuck in like the current lithium battery world we're in? Because I mean, that's part of our issue, right? And current battery technology doesn't like the cold. You can do battery management. You got to work. I mean, is it some of this stuff? Is it going to change? Is that how we're going to change the range just because of different minerals?
Um, yes, I mean, as if you think about it, a new EV, a Tesla, it can have up to 10,000 cell phone battery equivalents. That's a lot of batteries. And those
Yeah.
batteries are made of these metals. So the sheer quantity of these metals that we need is just really, really staggering. And as more people buy electric vehicles, there's just more demand. And so to date, we've kind of kept up. But you look at forecasts, I mean, globally, I think if I get my numbers right, 20% of all cars sold everywhere on the planet are now electric, right? That's huge. China is leading. It has close to 40% of all new sales. US is a bit behind. We're at 10% globally of new sales in the US. But globally, it's 20%. And so, right now, I think cost, charging network, these are things that need to get solved, but
Yeah, totally. Charging networks is a problem. I mean,
yeah,
so I at my AOS dealership, I was going to put EV charging stations there, thinking it'd be good for my customers, da 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 da. And then I thought, if you're not a customer, I'll charge you to charge, and if you are a customer, you can just charge for free. And then I started realizing there's all these laws in Illinois. I can't recharge for electricity and this and that. And I'm like, okay, if the government really wants to do things to make EVs take off, they need to start peeling some regulation that maybe was worked in the 70s, but shouldn't be regulated now. You
yeah.
know, um, and then talking about that, and even fossil fuel, like one of the things I thought about too with what you're doing. I mean, everybody that's against this, any person that's against the EV is like, yeah, look at how much diesel they use to run the mining equipment. But what you're doing, you're actually mining it with electric equipment anyways then.
Exactly. We've committed to be net zero, from 2030. So we may have to, in the short term, today we're using a diesel generator to charge on the ship, the robot. But longer term, we don't want to do that. We want to use clean energy or capture the carbon. And even when people make those comparisons, I recently read an article, even when you factor in the mining, the battery, and obviously the mix of the grid, right? Our grids in the States, our grid is still 60% fossil fuel right now.
Yeah.
It varies by state, but globally it's still, but even if you factor that in, an electric vehicle is still much lower emissions. Even factoring in the metals, the mining, the battery, and charging with our grid today, it's significantly less emissions.
Well, and people in the United States, we need to stop we need to get over our fear of nuclear power. And this was my opinion, not to
Yeah.
go too far off onto the side here, but because it is so much cleaner and like so
Yep.
everybody does like I know I try to do a carbon footprint analysis in every state I have robots in. And every state's carbon footprint analysis comes out differently based on how they generate power.
Yep.
And you can literally start seeing it in the offset. The states that you go into that have nuclear power, like your carbon footprint is much, much less, you know. And that would help some of the stuff in the grid system, you know. That's
I,
my opinion, but I'm no
I,
power expert.
I no, I completely agree. And actually, I wrote a blog post comparing nuclear power and deep sea mining because if you think about nuclear power, we lost about 20 years of innovation. The extreme environmentalists, the extreme NGOs, they kind of shut down any new nuclear power development. And we lost 20 years of innovation, which we're now coming back to. And we're realizing we can do things with the costs, we can do things with the safety, we can make it more modular. There's a lot of innovation that the best and the brightest can work on that makes things better. And for 20 years, no investment happened because people pushed hard and said, this is too dangerous, we shouldn't have it. And, you know, I see the same. I see the same people like Greenpeace that were violently opposed to nuclear power doing the same with deep sea mining. And it's crazy in my view because it will just create more harm. And not only are they trying to stop it, they're also trying to increase the regulatory burden so it becomes uneconomic. And right now, the regulatory burden around nuclear power is really, really high. It makes it very hard to make a return. And that, again, is a deliberate strategy that the NGOs have.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, it's kind of like they're asking for a result on one side. You know, we need to do better. We need to bring down our carbon footprint. But then any of the ways to solve that problem, they want to take that out of the equation. Well, but you can't do it that way. Figure out a different way. And that's the part with all the regulation and the stuff that they do that I personally never understand. You know, it's like if you want to electrify, then you need to peel away this regulation because there's just not enough in the grid. I mean, even at my own landscaping company, with us having, you know, so I have about a 200 employee landscape company, I do about $10 million, right? So just small numbers compared to the stuff you're doing, right? But the reality is that that's what it is. And if we don't have any more power, like I have ComEd, that's in Illinois, they're coming out, they're doing a study to see if they can bring me 3-phase power, and I'm trying to offset it with solar, but you know, that's the reality. That's actually the fertile. There's tons of people, there's tons of businesses like mine that would electrify, but no, there's nothing to supply me the power that I need. And then in order to get the power that I need, I'm the guy footing the bill. And
Yeah.
one day they will end up probably having it be government funded, and all the people that footed the bill in the first place won't get reimbursed. And that's what's keeping people from doing it, in my opinion.
Yep. No, I completely agree.
So, you know, we're like, so right now, so you are in the states of kind of looking, you know, like not looking, but you're going to be down in southern Florida. How long do you think it'll be before you're like full scale mining and turning this into like a juggernaut?
Yeah, we need to raise another round of funding. You know, we last raised about 2 years ago, and you know, with the success of picking up this nodule off the east coast of Florida, we think that really shows that most of the technical risk has gone. But we now need to then build the full size system. You know, because the one we have today has 3 arms. It's great for testing, but it's not large enough for production. So we need to build that full-size system. It will have 16 arms. Once that's built, we then need to build a fleet of these robots. So we have kind of 2 more financing rounds before production. We hope to get to production by 2026. So hopefully this year we'll close our Series A that will build the full-size robot. And then we're looking at kind of customer offtake financing to build a fleet of these robots so we don't have to get equity or dilution.
So I saw in my research you're the holder of two patents, right? Are all of them based on this company right now? Like, or is it, or
Um,
both of them, I should say?
Actually, those two, I think, are in the video domain from the last
Oh,
company.
okay. Well,
There are, I do have some provisional patents that I'm a co-author on at Impossible Metals, but I don't think they're yet granted. They're in the process.
so, and I asked that question because even as you're on the podcast talking about it, you know, are like, I mean, are you worried? Are there other people trying to do this right now also, or is it so like, how many competitors, how many people will you be competing with once this goes to market?
Yeah, I mean, today our competition is really the 70s technology. There's at least half a dozen companies that have built dredging systems. Many of them are actually like China's built one, Russia's built one, South Korea, Belgium, Switzerland. So that's our primary competition. But I have no doubt that if we prove that this works, others will try to follow what we've done. Now we have a bunch of patents. We have fairly deep pockets. It's pretty expensive to build these systems and test them. And we're trying to move at a lightning speed. So I'm not too concerned with people following. I think that's a good thing. I think if nobody follows, then maybe you haven't unlocked a market opportunity.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And I agree with you there. So I'm just surprised, like, obviously, besides this podcast, why is no one talking about it? Like, why have I never no and I've never heard about this unless if you didn't come on my show, I would not know. So is it like why is it like the best kept secret right now? Why?
Yeah,
Because I feel like this is very interesting that we can even do this.
yeah, and what's even more interesting is that we have these metals in U.S. waters, like obviously off Florida, but there's also areas around the minority islands, around Hawaii, around American Samoa, and right now there's a big concern that China's been pretty smart, but it's not good for us. Like they gone to Africa, they've gone to Indonesia, they've invested billions, they own and operate the mines, and they control who they sell to. And if our economy is going to move to electrification, which I'm convinced it will over the next few decades, do we want China to have control of whether they can turn that economy on and off? It's I think quite concerning. And obviously we have some of these metals in land, but it takes a really long time to get a new mine going on land. There's always not in my backyard. Like nobody wants a mine in their backyard.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
everybody will sue, that will delay things down. There's a lot of environmental review, but also the mines that you find on land, because we've already mined, are pretty remote and pretty low grade. And that means very, very expensive. And it's not really difficult. It's very difficult to compete. If your cost is, say, it costs you $5 a pound to get the material out of the ground, and China can get it out for $2, it's difficult to win that because people don't want to pay that premium. So the
Yes.
beauty of the seabed is that we can get it quickly. It's high grade, so we can get it for, say, $1 a pound out of the ground. And it's in no one's backyard. And with our technology, we preserve the habitat. So I think it's an important thing. And you're beginning to see dialogue in DC on this. So there was a bill just introduced by the Republicans of saying we should look at deep sea mining, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But unfortunately, it's becoming a bit polarized because the Democrats are kind of saying, "Oh, environmental," but they don't know about our technology. So I think we absolutely should do this. We need to do it for independence, and with new technology, we can do it in a way that doesn't harm the environment or people.
Yeah. Well, and take even the China part out of the equation. Just look at it in an economic, like just locally, we have this ability to do this here. We're so behind. This is what I'm always surprised in the space I'm in. America, people in the US, and I might get a little kickback on this, but everybody thinks we're so like advanced and we're so technologically advanced. But I was actually in the UK. I actually import a ball wash and management system from someone in the UK. He's my friend Phil. And the reality is we are way behind. I mean, they've had stuff out cutting driving ranges and golf courses for 10 years, yet we're just starting to do it here in the United States. And the only reason we do it here is it's the question of, well, will it save me money? You know, and at the end of the day, yeah, it would have saved you money 10 years ago. You know, it's crazy. We're just having the conversation, but yeah, I hate the fact that it's polarized because that's one of the things that slows us down in this country is everything has to turn into a debate or talking point or argument, even if the other side thinks it might be right. It's just something to argue about, you know. Um, so that said, I want to leave enough time to ask about you and kind of your life outside of business. Usually I do that with somebody on the show. So is there anything, since I really went off track on this, that you want to make sure that the listeners know about your company, what you're trying to accomplish, and then if I missed anything, and if not, then we'll kind of move into the personal side of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong believer that we need to transition off fossil fuels. I mean, they've been incredible for us. We would have not had the economies that we've had, but we now know there's a lot of pollution that comes, and there are longer term climate issues. But just the pollution alone, right? I mean, a lot of people are affected by bad air quality, and I think it's the right thing to do. We have the technologies, but right now they're expensive. And our company is trying to harvest these metals in a way that doesn't destroy the environment, that will ultimately lower the cost of these metals. And unlike, gas, electricity and metals, these metals are highly recyclable. So after 10 years of being in a car, they may have a second life, but then after that, they can be recycled and we can reuse them. Which again, I think is good. So, I just say what people read about deep sea mining is old technology, and with new technology, we can change the equation. And I strongly believe that we need to do this, and it's a way forward.
Yeah, yeah, you need to get like published in like some big newspaper or magazine because it's seriously like because you're right. I mean, if they're arguing over old mining or the old way of doing it, yeah, I mean, we have to figure out. I mean, and I doubt my tiny little podcast will help, but you never really know. So, with that said, I think what you're doing is fantastic. I, I mean, hats off to you for everything that you're working on. So, tell me a little about the younger you, though, right? Because obviously you're a serial entrepreneur. You're doing all this stuff, and I'm always interested in knowing someone's background to get them to want to work as long as hard as I know entrepreneurs have to. So kind of take me from your childhood into high school and just I always like to get the background on the younger version of the person.
Yeah, I mean, I was an underperformer at school. I just was not very good. I wasn't very academic. I was, I am dyslexic. So, I as a young child just going to school, I really struggled. I struggled to read, to write. Was a problem, and really even through high school, I just underperformed. I just scraped through. And then, luckily, my mother kind of put me into a community college, and that was less academic and more focused on electrical things, and that was where I started to actually realize that it wasn't all academic. I actually quite enjoyed that, and then that allowed me to go to college because I got the credit. So I was kind of a late performer. I've never been, and I'm really the opposite of an academic. I'm kind of a practical person. I do struggle with language. Spelling is something that everyone that sees my correspondence, they know it's me because the spelling checker is great, but it doesn't always pick them up, and
Long lost brothers. So let me tell you what I tell. So my ex-wife, I got to put this in. My ex-wife used to almost practically proofread any love note or letter I wrote her. And now, ironically, I'll tell her if when I do talk to her about my daughter that I basically employ people to check my spelling now. Like that's reality.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that in there. I get it.
Yeah.
We have parallels in common. So
Yeah.
continue on. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting in growing up in the UK, entrepreneurship and role models just weren't there. Especially, I was born in 1970, so kind of in the 80s and 90s, there were very, very few, and so I didn't really know what an entrepreneur was, and it was only kind of in my mid 20s that I started to get some exposure to them. And then I realized, oh, that's me. That's what I like to do. I have a higher tolerance for risk. I like to think of big ideas. I'm good at the big ideas. I need great people around me that can kind of do the details and the tactics of getting things. And I never give up. I mean, that's the cliche, but you have to have thick skins. I mean, doing startups is brutally hard, and there are many days you get no's on everything that you're doing, and it's so easy to just be depressed and give up, but you don't. And I think that's the best advice: the just keep going, stamina. Just don't give up. Believe in what you're trying to do, and work like mad to make it happen.
Yeah, I love so much what you're saying right now because we have so many similarities. I mean, when I was in high school, same thing. I was a C average student. I mean, if I could play football, I would have probably failed it. I mean, I passed just so I stayed eligible for football. I mean, thank God for sports, But you know, looking at it, everything I learned in high school was scraped by is kind of in a weird way, what's made me, in my opinion, a fantastic leader and entrepreneur because I always was good at delegation. I mean, I would install the car stereo for somebody to write a research paper for me. I that's just the kind of stuff that I would do, and looking back on it, it's almost embarrassing to say it, but now when you look at where I am in my life, I have this podcast, and one of the reasons I do it is to inspire people that feel like they might be an underperformer, but then to realize maybe they're just doing the wrong thing,
Yeah.
And another parallel is I was a union electrician. I didn't tell you that. So I went to college for small circuit chain analysis at community college, became a union electrician, went to 5 more years of school, and then started all the time. I was plowing snow, and I think um, going to your never give up type of attitude. Every time someone told me, "Oh my gosh, you didn't go to school for business. You'll never be able to do this." I was kind of like, "No, no, I'll do whatever I set my mind to. I will do it." It's like almost the point of borderline just being stubborn. Somebody tells you you can't, you will. And
Yeah.
I'm picking that up in what you said about yourself.
Yeah. No.
So is your family still in the UK? You said you came from the UK. So like mom, dad, like your family, like tell me about your family if you still have family.
Yeah. So my father passed when I was quite young, a teenager. But my mother is in the UK, and fortunately, I get to see her. I do a few trips a year, often combined with work. So that's really nice. And she remarried, and I have one sister who's there as well. And then, my wife, we live here in California, so that's us.
Awesome. Awesome. So what do you like to do for fun besides making stuff to deep sea mine?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to go skiing last weekend, which was awesome, and it was kind of a boys' weekend. So 8 of us, just rented a house and had a few days skiing in Tahoe, which is about 4 hour drive from Silicon Valley. So that was a lot of fun. I love to be in nature when I can, like to get out of the city, like to be on a mountain or to be in the middle of nowhere where there's few people and just get away from our screens and just disconnect. So I like to hike. I'm not the most active, but I do like to get into nature. So that's skiing is part of that, but so is hiking. When I have time, I love photography. especially landscapes and wildlife. And again, last year I was fortunate to go to Africa on the safari, and got to see the wildlife there, and that was a game-changing experience as well.
Oh my God, my fiance Gretchen wants to do that so bad. And I got to tell you, I'm a little concerned, man. I see those videos of those open carts and I think like vehicles. Were you nervous at all, or it was not as bad as the videos show?
Yeah, I mean, different parks have different rules. So some allow open and some don't. And most of the time we were in ones where the roof would open, but you're actually inside. And the guides are actually really knowledgeable. I mean, tourism and game drives is vast majority of the income for everyone there. So last thing they want is some bad, tourists getting mauled by a lion or something, because that would kill their industry. And they know everything. Like they have names for every lion, right? They're like family to them.
So, what was the coolest thing you saw when you're out there then?
Yeah, we saw a lion hunting. We kind of came up, we were in the game drive, driving around. And then in the corner of my eye, Steffi, my wife, she kind of saw something moving, and it was a lion chasing a piece of game. I don't know exactly, a buck or something. It didn't catch it, but still to just kind of see that was pretty spectacular. I mean, the leopards are also pretty spectacular as well. I mean, they're just incredible animals. But all of it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and going back to the Tahoe thing, they got a ton of snow up there, right? I mean, there's probably a lot of snow when you got there because they had that atmospheric river hit, like what was that, 3 weeks ago or something?
Yeah, exactly. They got a good amount of, so it's starting to warm up a little bit. But we had plenty of snow. I mean, it was spring skiing. It was very warm, blue skies. It was wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really happy I got to learn about you and learn about your company and learn about some of the things that you enjoy to do for fun. I'm fascinated by what you're doing. I say just keep on going with your passion and vision, and hopefully the I shouldn't say Republicans. Let's make it political. Hopefully, the Democrats realize that you're doing it differently and say, hey, we're going to fight the other people. But we're going to let them do what they're doing because this is okay. So hopefully the show can maybe somehow get trickle down to the right person and help with that. But I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.